All right, beautiful souls, welcome back to another episode of Universe the Game, and this is going to be the last one of the densities series here of the Law of One series. So the subcategory is densities, and we're covering the 5th, 6th, and 7th all in one video, and I'm going to make this as quick and as seamless as possible. And before we start that, I just want to say, if any of the audio on any of the previous videos was meh, if there was some distortion, I figured that out. It was some mixer stuff with the AT2020. It's very specific, but we got it figured out, and it should sound very nice at this point. So now that that's taken care of, let's get into the episode today. And what we do have is a lot of fantastic information that'll give you a lot of insight into how the universe works that is really actually tangibly helpful. At least it is to me. Okay, so let's just dive right into it. And remember, we're covering all three today. So there's not really that much information on all three, which is why I decided to do them all together in one episode. Because as I said in the 4th density video, there's not really, okay, this music is just like, let me just turn myself up, bro, relax. Can I turn you down to 7? Get you on that sacred number. All right, so there's not that much material in the Law of One that describes the 5th, 6th, and 7th, so I gave you the best what I could find, and I just scoured the Law of One and found some beautiful things in there, okay? So the 5th density is the density of light and wisdom, okay? And I'm just gonna run through a quick explainer so you know where we're going with this, and then you'll get the details. So the 5th density is that of light and wisdom, which if you really get into the Law of One, you find that the 4th is love and understanding, in that the byproduct of that is compassion. When you love and understand something, you usually have compassion. And so then when you get wisdom from that, in the 5th density, you generate that wisdom. Then you bring that together in the 6th and you unify the polarities. And then in the 6th, you are essentially, there is no more negative polarization in the 6th. Because it all becomes one. You become love. Truly, truly become love. And you have that realization, and you're in that social memory complex state. And now the social memory complex starts at 4th, but it isn't fully realized until the 6th. And so when we get to the 7th, and some may argue with me on that, with the social memory complexes, but you know, that's just my interpretation, is that's when you get that solidified. And I don't know exactly what point the social memory complex becomes fully. I feel like I don't know if you can continue to add beings to the social memory complex, and that's something I'm going to get into. I mean, that's really specific, but at this moment, I'm not quite too read on that. I couldn't find it in the 1st and 2nd book I looked. But so when we get to the gateway density, besides all that, right? When we get to the gateway density, the 7th, that just means you become one with everything. And you are one with the creator. You're one with all. You have no memory. You have no beginning, no end. And then the 8th is the beginning of the next octave. And so it's a 7 density universe, because in the 8th density, you move into the next octave in the next universe. Okay, so it's a system of infinity. And that's what I hope you see in that overview. So 5th density is the 1st density where you have to be consciously aware of the Law of One to progress. So that's interesting, because in the 4th and the 3rd, you don't. Think about that. To progress from 3rd to 4th, it's not about knowing what I'm telling you. It's actually quite the opposite. It's just about practicing love, polarizing. So you don't have to know the specifics of the Law of One. All you have to do is start to practice the practices of the Law of One, but you don't even have to know that that's the Law of One. Right? You can start to do things in other systems, but they're essentially the same, what the Law of One is trying to get at. If that makes sense. In a roundabout way. All right, so densities in battle. This is an interesting quote that I thought I'd start with, because it gives us the encompassing aspect of what 5th density actually does. What does 4th density do? What does 3rd do? And so we'll find out right here. So session 25, question 9. Questioner: would this density, an entity of this density, be more effective for this type of work than, say, an entity of density of 5 or 6? It'll make sense in a second. Ra: The fourth density is the only density besides your own which, lacking the wisdom to refrain from battle, sees the necessity of battle. Thus, it is necessary for the fourth density social memory complex be used. Okay, so what that quote was about, they was talking about a bunch of different stuff. I didn't include it because it was long. It was a lot of information. So the context I'm getting at to you is that the fourth density does battle in some ways as well as the third. And then when you get to the fifth, you're like, okay, we're over this. Obviously, it's more complex than that, but that's just a fascinating side note. And you'll see why that is as we progress through this show. Okay. So also about outer technology for travel, session 52, question 4. Questioner, then I am assuming in the positively oriented social memory complexes that a much higher percentage of them use personality disciplines for this travel. Is this correct? Ra, this is correct. As a positive fifth density moves into sixth, there are virtually no entities which any longer use outer technology for travel or communication. You're using your own thoughts for travel and communication. There is no, you don't get in anything when you get into the sixth. So everything is done by thought because you are becoming one with creation. So it's like in the Matrix, you can bend a spoon. It's known that people have abilities in real life right now, what we call real, in the third density. But it's realized to a much greater potential when you get to the sixth. Okay. So on polarity, this is one of the most important quotes in the Law of One when it comes to understanding the densities. Okay. So I didn't include the question because it didn't make sense to the context of this video and of this show. So just take it as it is, and you should still get it. So session 78, question 25. The fourth and fifth densities are quite independent. The positive polarity functioning with no need of negative and vice versa. It is to be noted that in attempting to sway third density mind-body-spirit complexes in choosing polarity, there evolves a good bit of interaction between the two polarities. In sixth density, the density of unity, the positive and negative paths must needs take in each other. Okay, I don't know if they said that wrong in the quote, or maybe I just put that wrong. The positive and negative path must take in each other, for all now must be seen as love/light and light/love. So again, this is huge. The positive and negative paths must take in each other. They must integrate each other, and they can't be separate anymore once you reach sixth density. This is not difficult for the positive polarity, which sends love and light to all other selves. It is difficult enough for service to self polarized entities that at some point the negative polarity is abandoned. So there becomes a point at which sixth density, again, I hope that's hitting home, that this is also what it talks about in the Levels of Consciousness book. I'm going to grab it. It's right here. It talks about something called the void. What is the void? Right? The void is at a level of enlightenment, and that is at 850. And when you reach the level of the void, what it's saying is that you've negated all love as an aspect of divinity, as an aspect of the creator. Okay? And when you do this, you're negating your whole self, in that can't happen at what the Law of One refers to at sixth density, and you can't get past the void, which is at the level 850, when we look at the levels of consciousness. And if you want to see that on the levels of consciousness, I actually have it right here. Okay? So that's in enlightenment 700 to 1,000 at 850. When you reach that level, that's when the void happened. But there's a quote in the in this book here, and I don't have it ready. I actually wish I would have now, because there's something about this book that is so profound. All of Dr. Hawkins' work, by the way, calibrates at I think it's in the 900s. So if you are taking in his stuff, okay, that's a whole nother book. That's a whole nother episode. So I'm not going to get off track, because I could get off track on Dr. Hawkins for hours, literally. But these books radiate the level of enlightenment to some level. Okay. But that's, again, not related to law of one. So we got a lot of videos. That's why we're going daily. That's why we're doing these daily. So creating third density form and how you do this. All right. This is also fascinating to me. So we're jumping around in the law of one. So we were at earlier sessions and we're going to session 90, question 7. So questioner, please comment on my misconception that if that is possible. And so, again, we don't know the misconception because I didn't include it because it was a long question. But in the fifth density, the manifestation of the physical complex is more and more under the control of the conscious mind complex. Therefore, the fifth density entity may dissolve one manifestation and create another. Consequently, the choice of a fifth density entity or complex of entities wishing to communicate with your peoples would choose to resemble your people's physical complex chemical yellow ray vehicles. So what this is saying, that was just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, which it could be to some, but it might make perfect sense to others, right? I'm not going to assume anything because I'm not sure where you're at with the law of one. So you could have read the law of one 5 times, or you could have never read it and you're just hearing about it for the first time. So I'm trying to cover everything, all the bases. Okay, so what it's saying is that you can dematerialize your vibration when you're in fifth density all the way down to third density and resemble third density and show yourself to third density beings right now. And you can do that in fifth, and you can also do that in sixth, but I think there's another part of the law of one where it talks about that fourth really doesn't do that as much as fifth does. That in the fifth, you actually come into contact with humans more. But don't quote me on that. But I think I read that this morning. So this quote from the law, and I know I'm doing a lot of quotes, but I felt like when we're talking about things, like when I did my course on the levels of consciousness, I included in when I did the enlightenment section, I didn't really give too much of my contextual and contentual understanding because I didn't have that much, right? And so it's the same thing when it comes to these densities. You know, I can give my subjective opinion, but that's why I'm including these, because you can get it straight from the source. If you don't want to go look up all of these different sessions and all the different things and figure it out, I got you. That's why I'm here, right? To make it simple. So this was a question asked by Jim, who was the scribe, remember? He was not the questioner, but the scribe. And so he asked, I think I have a penetrate, and so this is session 59, question 3. I have a question from Jim that states, I think I have penetrated the mystery of my lifelong anger at making mistakes. I think I have always been aware subconsciously of my abilities to master new learnings, but my desire to successfully complete my mission on Earth has been energized by the Orion group, which we talked about before, remember, into irrational and destructive anger when I fail. Ra, we would suggest that as this entity is aware of its position as a wanderer, it may also consider what pre-incarnative decisions it undertook to make regarding the personal or self-oriented portion of choosing to be here at this particular time space. This entity is aware, as stated, that it has great potential, but potential for what? Right? What potential do we have? This is a pre-incarnative question. The work of the sixth density is to unify wisdom and compassion. And side note, let me stop the quote for a sec. What did I say at the beginning? That sixth density unify. That's literally pretty much exactly what I was telling you. That compassion is fourth density, wisdom is fifth density. Then you bring those together in sixth density. And so, Jim, this entity abounds in wisdom. The compassion it is desirous of balancing has, as its antithesis, lack of compassion. In the more conscious being, this expresses or manifests itself as lack of compassion for self. We feel that this is the sum of suggested concepts for the thought, which we may offer at this time without infringement. But that last paragraph I thought was so relatable to my experience and to possibly to yours, that you are desiring to balance, but yet you're having a lack of compassion for your own journey. I know how I have for so long. so much lack of love for myself, but yet I was trying to balance myself and reach a more loving state. But I didn't realize the thing I was lacking in trying to help the world was love for myself, was compassion for myself. Because I felt like I had all this wisdom that I wanted to share, but I didn't have compassion because I didn't feel like I was ready, or I didn't have this together. I didn't look the way I wanted to look, or something was going on in my life. Wasn't working the job that I wanted to work. All of these different things. And I never had compassion for myself in these situations. And so what I'm asking you is to have compassion for yourself in these situations. In this life, this game that these earth beings have called life, very serious. It's important to have some sense that compassion and love for yourself is the strongest thing you can do, because the ego thinks that having this sense of resentment or should've will somehow lead you to make better decisions. But at some point, if you have that reflection at first being like, oh, I could have handled this in a different way and I could have a different result. But if you take away that I did it wrong, like I should have done, if you just look at the potential of what could have happened had you have acted this way, look at that timeline in which things would have transcended in a different way or transpired in a different way, that's what this is saying. You know, that to have compassion for yourself, even when you don't choose the things upon reflection that you would have chose. But that's the thing is, we think to ourselves, now that I know, I wouldn't have chose that, but you didn't know. And I believe I'm always doing the best I can with what I've got. And that I live by and I stand by. And if you can start to see that in that moment you did the best that you could, that will give you such a greater capacity for compassion for yourself in this journey. Right? As we play this game, it's not even really of life, it's more of eternity. We're going to be doing this forever in some sense. We, as in you and me, will unify when we get to 6th density, and maybe even sooner. And another thing that I want to hit on is death, and I'll probably cover this again when I do the death episode specifically, but I want to mention it here, that when we think about unifying into, you know, what we call a social memory complex, let me go back to that slide of the map I made, where it is at the beginning. So we're looking at social memory complexes. When we think about this concept of unifying, most people think, well, am I going to die? What's going to happen? Like, okay. So we take a breath and we realize that if all beings are one with the one infinite creator, which is you, what does this mean? That means that when you merge with other beings, that you are going to remember their past lives and their current perceptions, which will be yours now, as will yours be theirs, which brings you together. So you actually have access to both. Your awareness will just be expanded, because it's not a game of, you know, your emotions and your memories are going to leave you. No, not until 6th density, when we become, actually not until 7th, until we become one with all that is, you know, then we will, and we'll get into 7th in just a second here. But a quick note is that you won't lose, you'll actually just gain. So think about that when you reach that level, that you won't lose anything. Because I know I'm saying that a lot, but it's so important to understand that when you go through this transition, just passing over, when the body is no longer inhabitable in this 3rd density experience that we're experiencing right now, you are just going to remember everything. You're not going to lose anything. I mean, on one level, you're going to lose the experience of being in this body for longer, but you're not losing it because you never really had it. You never really had that future, right? More what I'm getting at here is that your physical body is no longer inhabitable, so you're just going to move on. So what is even death? It's a remembrance, right? You remember more of what you are. And so when you see death as almost a liberation instead of being an annihilation, this is a huge transition in your own ability to interact with the world. That you only have a limited time, yes, but that's not a limited time until annihilation. It's a limited time until liberation from having this limited experience, because it will be more unlimited. It won't be fully unlimited, because you won't have that until you get to 7th. But in 7th, you're not going to be able to have this experience. So it's not completely unlimited, because in one sense you won't be incarnated into a body, but there won't be a you anymore because you'll be one with everything. So in a paradoxical way, you actually will be incarnated into a body because you'll realize your connection to every one of those beings that you thought were separate. And I know that was a complex analysis, but I think that that's so, it's a profound lesson I've learned. My dad died yesterday. I hope he's in a good place. Okay, so wow, what are the chances that you're hearing this? And I did not plan to talk about death in this way. And I'm sending so much love to you in this moment. And I encourage everyone that watches this to tune into the energies, the one known as Laura, Lara. However you want to pronounce it, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is we're all sending you so much love here together. Okay, and I can feel that when I'm sending that to you. But as we go through this experience, I hope that you see that when it's time for you and you have learned your lessons, or, all of the life experiences have led up to this point in which the transition is necessary for you, as you're being guided in so many ways that we can't all see, that we all don't know, because there's so much that we don't know. That's one thing that I encourage you and anyone who's struggling with, transitions. It's not death, it's transitions. When beings transition, I was just talking to my dad about this earlier, before this, that if you lose someone, we don't have enough information to say that wasn't the right call. We don't. And so we don't know when we transition to third to fourth and fifth to sixth, when people leave the third early, is that the right call? I can't make the decision. I can't. And I hope that you just rest in knowing that the place outside of the third density that we return our awareness to, that we were always a part of, is a place of pure harmony and bliss. And that they're returning to that love. And if anything, check out the work of Journey of Souls. And you'll see that the first episode of Universe the Game here on YouTube, and that's on Spotify too. I talked about that, the transition into death, or really the transition into fuller life than this, because life exists on many planes and in many bodies. We are aware of a certain amount of those bodies as we incarnate. And it's like, this actually relates to this session that we're talking about now in this episode, because when we're talking about first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, they are all in potentiation at the beginning of time. And it's just, that is already a part of us, but we are just not aware that it is. And that the higher self actually, I didn't even put this in here. And I'll do an episode on the higher self specifically, but that the higher self is in sixth density right now, and that it's guiding you. And so the higher self is you, but it's you with all your unlimited wisdom that you have in that density. And so this is what when I say guided, some people are like, yeah, spirit guides. Okay, buddy. What? What I'm saying is that the law of one even refers to this. Most spiritual texts that you'll find, is it a coincidence that there is always this talk of spirit guides? To me, it's not a coincidence, and that there's much more that we know of going on. And in that those micro understandings of this game are talked about by Dolores Cannon in Between Life and Death and Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Noon. So if you want to refer to more information, then access those teachings, okay? So we'll get into the last part of this episode, and then we'll continue on into the next part of the series. So let me find which slide it was on here. Okay, so seventh density. Oh, and the last part of that quote that I don't even know if you remember at this point, but give yourself compassion. Give yourself compassion when you're struggling, because there's no point in not. Because you're just causing yourself to suffer. And that's the truth. Because that's definitely my truth. I've lived that so long. So just do yourself a favor and give yourself some compassion for where you're at on your journey now, and that you're enough right now. And that will give you such a sense of liberation that you don't need to be more than you are. You are enough now. And this is true actualization of your potential, because your potential lies in what you've realized yet, what you're aware of yet. And expanding your awareness to more of yourself And that self being love is one of the most important things we could do. We talked about this in previous episodes, that it is one of the most important things, if not the most, that you realize your connection to infinity, to the creator, the one infinite creator, to intelligent infinity, whatever you want to call it, source, spirit. It's all the same thing. And I hope that you see through this show and all the other shows that we're just talking about the same thing. Deep down, it's like a treasure chest of divinity is within all of us. But we have to unlock that ourselves. Nobody can unlock that so it will radiate. It's like, how much are you going to radiate your own divinity? Okay, and this is what the law one talks about, and this is what the map of consciousness is. How much of your own divinity are you radiating in the human body? And when you're at a lower level of consciousness, you're going to radiate less. But it doesn't mean that you are less within. It's like you've shut that treasure chest a little bit more. You've shut that chest a little more. And as you open up that chest into more of what you are, you see the gold being that you are, that intelligent love that exists within all, that exists within you and everything else. And as you actualize that into this life more, life becomes much easier and less serious. Because this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Life doesn't have to be difficult. And I hope that with the Universe the Game series, you don't take it as though I'm not taking life like the experience isn't real. No, I'm just saying that with Universe the Game, what we're getting at is that there is a game aspect to this. So this is the game of divinity, and this is the game of oneness, that there's nothing else for it to do than explore many. If there is just one being at the essence of everything, and maybe it is a geometric shape, or maybe it's not, and the geometric shape is the manifestation of the one infinite creator. Maybe it is just all one being. But what would that one being do? All it would do would be express itself. And how does it express itself? By making two. How does it learn about what it is? By manifesting itself into some sort of body. Because without a body, how is it going to do anything? It's not, right? Because the body has to be separate, right? The body has to be separate from consciousness, at least a little bit, so that consciousness can be in the body and then consciousness can be outside the body, so that it can have an experience of itself. Because how else would it know what it was? You see? And this is the game that we're all playing. And the less we separate ourselves from others, even when they wrong us, the closer we get to our own true nature. And if you find yourself getting into the law of one, it will become very clear that this book, this series, this beautiful, profound thing that we're studying and learning from is a non-duality teaching. That is at the core, and that is what we are all learning about and realizing every single moment. And you can realize that through suffering, or you can realize that through letting go. And that is your choice. At every moment you have that choice. And whatever you choose is up to you and you only. Nobody's forcing you to be resentful, to be angry about the world, about other people, what other people did to you. You are choosing that. As tough as that was to hear at one point in my life, through much struggling and pain, I've realized that I have been causing myself my own struggling through the way I've been perceiving myself as this separate being. And of course, there's layers and layers upon layers of realizations, but that's one thing that I'm learning to see in everyone. And as I almost have to practice it now, but of course you can realize in an instant, in a path of transcendence, you can just realize your connection to everything just like that. But there's also an aspect of we're eminently realizing that we are infinity itself and enlightenment itself. We are that. And as we take that path, we realize that more and more, and sometimes that path is up and down. Sometimes it is. You're a tone poem. Remember, you're music. In the universe, the one verse of creation, you're that music. And in music, sometimes we get those sharp notes, right? Sometimes we get those major, sometimes a minor. And that's how music is, right? And remember, also, when we are listening to music, we're not always trying to get to the end of the music, right? We're not always trying to get to the end of the song. No, the song is not the most beautiful at the end. No, the song is beautiful whenever the song is going. And that's you. So don't just see the end realization of your own divinity as that beautiful thing. No, it's beautiful throughout the entire thing. And if I seem distracted right now, it's because the stream is frozen on my end, and I'm just making sure that I'm still live. And I am, so I'm just gonna have to task manager quit it out at the end. I don't know why it froze, but it's still up, so we're good. I love YouTube. You're my best friend. Just kidding. All right, so my voice is getting a little bit shot here, but I really hope that you realize that we are a symphony. We are all a symphony. The entire human race is a symphony, and we are just experiencing our own music, and we get to decide what tune we're playing. And I know that sounds corny, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but we all do truly get to decide how we are contributing to the human song. I really think about that. Like, what is your contribution today? Is it in love? Is it in peace? You know? And as weird as that is to contemplate, when you get into deep spirituality and in deep spiritual texts, you find that they're all relaying the same thing. Even things like Star Wars are saying the same thing. That everything is the Force. Everything is one with the Force. I am one with the Force. What does that mean? I am one with divinity. And the law of one refers to that as a one infinite creator. What does Star Wars say? The Force. I am one with the Force. What does religion say? You know, Christianity is going to say God. What is Buddhism going to say? You know, they're not going to say God, I'll tell you that, because the Buddha didn't like the word God, because people would misperceive that word. You'll probably never find, unless I'm missing something, you know, you'll never find in Buddhism them saying those words, because people think God is outside of them, but it is them. It is them. You are that. And we all have that within. The kingdom of heaven is within, is what Christianity was getting at, and it's all the same thing. See, I'm relating all of these other teachings so that you can see that we're all talking about the same thing. And yes, we all have our distortions. Yes, we all have our things that we see, that we might see life through lower levels sometimes, or even just, you know, as long as we are not at enlightenment, there's going to be some distortion, because the distortion is why we're not at enlightenment. And as we clear that distortion, we realize it's just that. It's just distortion. It's nothing else but that. And there's not something wrong with us. Okay, and I know I just got into it, but I'm just feeling really passionate about relaying that to you at this moment. It's just flowing. It's just flowing. I feel like I'm not even talking. Okay, so let's get into seventh density, and then that'll be it for today's show, okay? So I can still see you and hear you. Beautiful. Thank you, Jesse. Okay, so when we get into seventh density, this is pretty much all the law of one says about the seventh density. It doesn't say very much. Okay, we know it's the gateway density. So this is directly from the law of one. So session 16, question 22. Questioner. Thank you very much. In previous material, before we communicated with you, it was stated that by the Confederation, that there's actually no past or future. All is present. Would this be a good analogy? Ra. There is past, present, and future in third density. Really hear that. There is. It's illusionary at some point, but it is, according to the law of one, it is. In an overview, such as an entity may have made, removed from space-time continuum, it may be seen that in the cycle of completion, there exists only the present. We ourselves seek to learn this understanding. At the seventh level or dimension, we shall, if our humble efforts are sufficient, become one with all, thus having no memory, no identity, no past, no future, but existing in all. So I put in parentheses here at the end my own words. They said level, hence universe the game. So if we ever think about universe the game, we think about it as levels instead of densities. It did say levels, though. At some point in the law of one, it did say levels. So if I ever refer to the densities as levels, if I ever say to get past this level, hey, it's in the law of one. And I love that. I love that. That's just a little side thing that I'm just kind of geeking out about. But anyways, that is the beautiful essence of what we're getting at when we talk about unity. Okay. So one more here. So again, about the seventh density, 16, session 16, question 23. Questioner, does this mean that you would have awareness of all that is? Ra, this is partially correct. It is our understanding that it would not be our awareness, but simply awareness of the Creator. In the Creator is all that there is. Therefore, this knowledge would be available. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's it. That's the densities. That it's not. See, this is what a lot of people think when they get to this ultimate level. It will be somehow they've made it to this level of enlightenment. That person did. But no. It's not you that did. Because you realize you're everything at that. So there is no you to claim that. That's what they're saying. That, you know, I'm relating the teachings of Dr. Hawkins because it's been so profound, but it kind of correlates here. That at the level of enlightenment, or you call it the seventh density, and you can realize you can activate the ray of the seventh density, which is your seventh chakra. You can activate that in the body. You don't have to wait to activate that. We can only activate it so much, and then that's what I believe is referred to when it's like the limit. If we look at the map of consciousness here, the limit is 1,000. What that means is that we can only activate our energy centers or chakras so much, and then we can no longer be within the body because our body can't handle that much electromagnetic or electricity, however you want to say it. They can't handle that much energy. The body can't. Wow. So it all fits together that when we move up into higher energy bodies, as you know, Richard Rudd would call the 7 sacred bodies, the Corpus Christi. The last body is a monadic body. It's a body of infinity. That's what we're talking about. You know, that's the 7th density. So the 7 sacred bodies relate to the 7 densities, which relate to the 7 chakras, which relate to the 7 notes on a 7 major keys on a musical scale, which relate to the 7 colors on the rainbow, which relates to the number 7 in so many different teachings being the sacred number of God. Not that matters, but it's like they're all saying this because it's all connected. Oh my God. Woo! Can you feel it? I feel this sense of realization that it's all correlated. In that some teachings are going to give us some of the way, some are going to give us some are going to give us some. And as we make it through our journey in the 3rd density, we realize that the main core essence, that a lot of information is useless if we don't practice, is love and compassion. That is service to self. And that is the essence of the teachings of the law of one again. And so, yeah, we can understand all this fantastic wisdom, but you know, the practical thing to take away from this episode from me and from most of my episodes, hopefully, you know, there's going to be some episodes I do where there's a lot of wisdom and it helps you to understand reality. And, you know, one aspect that I just want to relate to you in this moment is the essence of love, that unity and love is not what we think of it as, this small thing that we have for something. That divine love is the essence of everything. That unconditional love, divine love, however you want to say it, is unity itself. And that is what holds everything together. That is the fabric of consciousness. That is the tapestry of consciousness. At the beginning, at the very underneath all the layers of what we think we are, is that. So you can't be separate from that. So when you don't feel loved, you feel lonely, it's because you're separating yourself from everything else. But it doesn't have to be physical. It's not a physical thing. It's a energetic connection, and you can tap into everything in the entire universe at once. If you are devoted and willing to get to that level and to let go that much, you can get to the level of enlightenment. Absolutely. In an instant. It is possible. Because in an infinite universe, anything is possible. So don't limit yourself. And realize that you have the potential within you as everyone else does. All right. And so this will do it for this episode of Universe the Game. And I hope that that covered the densities in as full as I could. As I said, when we're talking about Universe the Game and we're talking about the higher densities, there's not that many words. There's not that many words to describe all of the different things that come with the higher densities. And I mean, you get to third density and it's the shortest incarnations, and then he starts going back up. So just imagine, I couldn't find the numbers, and they might be in there somewhere, but I didn't take the time. But the fifth and sixth densities are just going to be increasingly longer. And the reason why I don't think that time matters is because time is actually relative to your space or to your place in space-time, because gravity is going to affect the way that you experience reality. Okay, and so what we think of as 90,000 years, in fourth density, when we think about 90,000 years is one incarnation, that might not actually be the same amount of time as we experience it. Time might go by a lot faster. A second might actually be 1/10 of a second. So beautiful. All right, hello from Sweden. Hello, all over the world here on Universe the Game, all over the universe. We're tuning in. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with me on this episode of Universe the Game. And in the next episode, I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. We will hit that up later today. I've got a podcast to catch. I'm a guest on a podcast, and then I will make the slides for tomorrow, and we will get right back into the next episode. It's probably going to be, well, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. You'll see. You'll find out. It's a surprise. And if you're watching this later, obviously you'll know what that is, and you'll just kind of keep steamrolling through the episodes. So anyways, I hope that this, on a closing note for this density series, I did the density series because I felt like it was needed to understand what we were, and that we could do that through the densities. And then it becomes clear when we talk about other things, the events of each density and how they all play out. So this is the foundation. This is the groundwork of understanding the law of one. And if you understand this, it will give you such an easier time when I talk about other concepts, okay? So I will be back in tomorrow's episode of Universe the Game. And until then, peace. All right.